Hello everybody, welcome to the I Am IT Geek YouTube channel. My name is Shabazz Dar, and as ever, I am the IT Geek. Welcome back to my Microsoft Entra Deep Dive series. We are well deep, well not deep, quite deep in the series yet. We're still working our way through that portal, still working our way through this series. This is episode 5. We've obviously looked at a lot of topics already within Microsoft Entra, specifically Azure AD. Working our way down the portal on that left-hand side of the menu. We've looked at users and groups, do a bit of a recap of what the last episode was shortly. But yeah, this is episode 5. Let's get started with the presentation so we can see what we've got in store today. So, as I mentioned, this is the Microsoft Entra Deep Dive series. Last episode, we looked at Azure Active Directory devices. Specifically, we looked at sort of the management tasks that you can do within devices. There wasn't that many from Azure AD. We looked at device settings and different settings you can set within Azure AD for your devices. Then it took a bit of a longer, deeper look at enterprise roaming and what that is and how you can use it. Again, wasn't that much in the portal that you can do. If you remember, you have to kind of configure group policies in Intune to really make use of it. And then throughout the episode, I talked about sort of best practices. In today's episode, we are going to take a look at applications specifically, so Azure Active Directory applications. That's going to include take a look at enterprise applications, have a little discussion around what they are, some features, and actually create one in the portal. And then we're going to talk about app registration. What is app registration? Some of its features, and then again have a look in the portal. And throughout, I'll talk about best practices. So before I get started, I just quickly want to do another giveaway. So I think episode 2, I think it was, maybe episode 3, I can't remember. But I did a giveaway of Ryan Mangan's Azure Virtual Desktop book that he did, Mastering Azure Virtual Desktop. So today, so we're still going to announce the winner of that. I've not quite announced it yet. So today I'm actually going to do a giveaway of the Certified Kubernetes Administrator CKA Exam Guide by Melanie Quinn. So again, I did a review of this. This isn't my bag really, so I read it once, obviously for my book review. But another packed book that I had. I thought, you know what, give it to somebody and do it as a giveaway and let somebody else use it. So again, really good book. I did a review on it. Check the review. I'll put the link to the review in the description of this video. But it's a great book. So I'm going to do a giveaway of this. Same rules as last time, really. You need to be a subscriber, obviously. You need to like and comment on this video, the hashtag IamITGeek. And you also need to share this video on social media, again, with the hashtag IamITGeek. And then I'll obviously randomly pick out a winner. So keep an eye out for that. Let's take a look at what's the first topic in today's presentation, which is going to be enterprise applications. So before I go into the portal, I want to talk a little bit about, what is an enterprise application. So an enterprise application is the application identity within your directory. So in our case, Azure Active Directory. The service principal or enterprise app can only be assigned access to the directory if it exists, and it's kind of acts as an instance of that application. Some of the features, you can, assigned users can log into the application via like a user access URL. And then also from the My Apps portal, or by quickly going directly to that application URL that you can get. But there's an option which we'll look at that option in the portal. You can set that option to yes. Only users who have been assigned to the application may sign in if they're on that assignment. If you're not assigned to it, you can't sign into it. If an assignment is required, applications must be assigned to be granted a token. Even if it's assigned to the application, no users will be able to sign in if this option isn't set to no. So again, there's another feature we'll look at in the portal. Another feature is users could log in using their homepage URL if they create the application expressly for themselves. So an example, when instance is when the application is chosen to the My Apps interface, the URL is launched, and if that application is from the Azure AD gallery, you can go to this URL to find out more. You can go to that URL to get to there. You cannot change the homepage URL with enterprise apps, but you need to change the application object's URL. So the main service objective connected to the enterprise application also has a sort of special identification number called an object ID. This identification may be helpful when utilizing PowerShell or sort of other sort of CLI sort of interfaces to perform management actions against this application. We're not going to be going into any sort of PowerShell in this series, but we are going to be doing mainly the portal. It is different from the application's object identification. And finally, just another feature that I wanted to mention is the identifier serves to change data of the application's local instance, including assigning users and groups to that application. You also update the enterprise application properties within their identification, and you can do like a kind of single sign-on configuration with it as well. So that's kind of enough about some of the theory behind it. Let's jump into the portal and have a look how to configure it. So here we are back in the Azure Active Directory portal, and as you can see, we're obviously on the dashboard. But if we go down here, left hand side, we've already looked at users, groups, devices, applications. We're on applications, sorry, and we're going to click on enterprise applications. So a couple of prerequisites: you need to make sure obviously you have a 0D account, which I do, but also you need to have either global administrator or application administrator to configure enterprise applications. Okay, so to add an enterprise application, first need to go to up here. So here we can see some applications are already configured. Got my Nerdio one there. On the left hand side we can see all the different types of things we can do for management purposes. We can obviously all applications, where we'll create a new application shortly. Application proxy. So again, this is for when you want to use the application proxy service. Obviously, now an example of this is if you have remote desktop services. Quite a common use cases. I've done a lot of configurations of this for remote desktop services, which is hosted on premises. But again, you've got a hybrid identity, and you want to utilize your cloud credentials to access Azure remote desktop services. You create an application proxy. And with this, you essentially download a connector and you install it on your, for an RDS purposes, you install it on your gateway server, RDS gateway. Could be a web server as well, if you do, for web server purposes. But if you use the RDS environment, you can install the connector service on there, and that'll then appear in here as a connector group. You create a connector group. And then you can essentially use that to proxy connections from to RDS to Azure, and use your Azure AD credentials as well to connect to it. So if we go down here again, just going through the portal, we'll look at user settings for our enterprise applications. So the top here we have users can add gallery apps to my app. So again, at the moment it's set to no, but if this option is set to yes, then users may add any app which supports password single sign-on to appear in my apps. Now, again, I don't believe there's really in my opinion, there's no best practice to this. This is all very much depends on your organisation and their policies. At the moment, obviously, I've set it to no, but if you want to give your users more kind of access to the My Apps page and be able to add any app to that supports single sign-on, then you want to click yes to this. From the Office 365 setting as well here, so users can only see Office 365 apps in their 365 portal. I think this is a good one. I would select this to yes, because then this gives you access to Outlook, Word, Excel, especially if you're licensed for those, all those sort of Office 365 apps. So I would personally have that as yes. And here you can set up 3 default applications for your end users, so they can access third-party resources. So you can add an application from your application list here. If you want 3 kind of default ones, and they'll be like your company standard ones. And again, go down to App Launcher here. So this collections enable you to customize your end user's portal. So you can again add a new collection here and have a collection of applications. Again, this is the use case here might be if you've got different departments and you want to create a different collection of apps for each department to see as default. So marketing might have, say, Adobe applications, and you want to, you've created the enterprise application for them, and you want to create a collection. So when the marketing people log into My Apps, they see their collection. Same with, you could have engineering apps like CAD, etc. in a separate collection, and only the engineering team see those. As we go down, again, we're going to look at conditional access later on, so I'm not going to dwell too much on that. But again, you can configure conditional access for your applications and set it so only a user has to meet certain criteria before they're allowed access to an application. Again, consent and permissions as well here. So Again, user consent for application. Configure whether users are allowed to consent for applications. So you might have some legal requirement or whether they might need to consent to using an application. So you can configure that all here. Same for user consent for applications and group owner consent for apps accessing data as well. So configure whether group owners are allowed to consent for applications to access your organization. There's admin consent there as well, and permission classifications. These are all extra layers of security you can put on your applications, enterprise applications specifically. And then as we go down, we see the activity and sign-in logs, etc. So let's go back to all applications. Actually, go through the process of creating a new application. So when you click on new application, now we've got various we can integrate it with AWS if we want, Google Cloud, Oracle, or SAP. And then again, as we go down, you can integrate with on-premises, which is more your application proxy. You can do sort of federated SSO. Again, we mentioned Adobe. These are all the out-of-box apps you can sort of integrate with that. So if we just, for example, let's click on, let's just do Azure AD. These are all different on Azure AD. So let's click on SAML toolkit, for example. Okay, so we can create, this is going to create a SAML, a single sign-on sort of toolkit for us. And again, we can look at the documentation if we want, or we just click on create, and that'll create that enterprise application for us. And once we've clicked on create, we should see that in our portal in a second. So let's let this complete. Okay, no, it's completed. Excellent. So now here's that if we go to all applications, we should see this in here. I'll just refresh that. Yeah, there it is. It's your AD SAML. Okay, so it's there. Now here's where we can configure it. We can assign users in groups. We can set single sign-on. We can provision user accounts as well. Again, if we go for a deployment plan, configure single sign-on, conditional access, so to improve our security. Look at properties. Just gives an idea of what all the properties are for it. So do you want to enable this for users to sign in? Yes or no? Give it a name if you want to give it a more kind of organization friendly name. You can put a logo, a different logo. You can put your own logo on it if you wanted. All these, again, these are the user access URLs, which I mentioned in the first part of when I was looking at the presentation. We've got the object ID that we talked about. But again, is an assignment required? Yes or no? If you click no, when it tells us here, sorry, there it is. This option is to set, if it's set to yes, when users and other apps or services must be assigned this application. So I best practice, I recommended you do have assignment for applications. It's just a bit more secure. And is this visible to users? Do you want this visible to users? Yes or no? Normally, if users are going to be using it, then of course you want it assigned. You want it to be available. We'll come down here again. This is again, I've always said best practice in my opinion to assign an owner. So then they can authorize access to it, an assignment. Roles and assignments, roles and administrators. So this is what roles or administrative roles are assigned to this application. Again, if you can see, so there's two at the moment: Cloud Application Administrator and Reports Reader. Now the reason, so these were assigned when it was created, and the reason these have been assigned, because this is what it needs. That app, enterprise app, needs to have these two roles to be able to function. So you don't really want to play about with this too much, especially when you create it. Unless you're creating a custom app, you're really not going to play with these. These are set right at the creation. Unless you're creating a custom app, I personally don't think you're going to play about with these unless the app needs a further requirement and needs a further sort of access. Users and groups. This is where you can add users and groups to the assignment. This is where you configure the single sign-on. Obviously, at the moment it's stable, but you can have SAML or linked. Provisioning. So this is where let it load. So this is where we can provision. Out of the box automatic provisioning. It's not supported, unfortunately, but this is where you can do like automated identification lifecycle management. It's not supported for this app, so we can't do it, unfortunately. And then self-service, where you can give users access to actually request from self-service, but you need to configure single sign-on to this application to use self-service. So, but some of the access you can configure is allow users to request access, which is set to no by default, but you can set this to yes once you've done the single sign-on configuration. Which group should you assign users? You can select a specific group to assign this to. Again, like I mentioned, I think it's better to do group assignment rather than user assignment. Again, you can set the approval requirement, who is allowed to approve access. So you'll need a group of approvers. Normally, again, owners or managers normally. And which role should users be assigned? Should they have a role before they can access this application? And similar down here again, we've got conditional access sort of to this this application, permissions, and also token encryption as well, which is a new one. And you can import a certificate again for extra security. Again, the activity as well. So that's how to create an enterprise application. Let's jump back into the portal. Let's jump back into the presentation and have a look at what the next part is. Welcome back. So we've just looked at enterprise applications, and if you remember from the sort of intro and breakdown that we did earlier, we're now going to look at app registrations. So an app registration is an Azure Active Directory. In Active Directory, it's typically done by sort of developers, internal developers who want to develop external client applications to read and write in their own sort of dataverse. So some features, so depending on the use case, you can utilize Azure application registrations for single tenant or multi-tenant, some of the reasons. However, it only exists in one directory, also known as its home directory. Two types of objects from when the application registration finishes. The first one is an application object, which you see kind of under the app registration in Azure AD, and we'll be looking at shortly. Using this object as a template, you can configure various items like app roles, client secrets, or API permissions. The service principal is that second object that we mentioned, and you can find this in the Azure Active Directory Enterprise Registration Blade. In the Enterprise Registration Blade for Azure AD, each application object created via the Azure portal with Microsoft Graph APIs or the Azure AD PowerShell module produces a corresponding service principal object. An application object gives you rise to a sort of concrete instance called a service principal. A service principal inherits specific properties from that original object. Last feature I want to mention before we jump into the portal: app owners manage all aspects of their registered applications, and it's important to review the ownership of all applications in your organization regularly. However, application ownership should be kept to a minimal set of people within your organization, so normally a group of managers. So now let's jump back into the portal and have a look at app registrations. Welcome back, and here we are back in the Microsoft Entra portal, specifically Azure Active Directory, and we're down at app registration. So here, as you can see, we've obviously got a few apps that I've registered here, doing some messing about with some demos that I've been doing. And unlike with the enterprise application where we had a lot of options, we don't have those with app registration. It's very straightforward. We can either kind of look at an existing app registration. And so let's look at an existing one before we go into one. So here, this is one I configured. I can't remember when, but this is a storage account. And again, we've got information around the app registration here. So any sort of client credentials where you can add a certificate or a secret, redirect URIs, application ID, which you normally need when configuring this, object ID, application ID, tenant ID, etc. As we go down, we can look at branding and properties. So give it its name, put a logo on. Upload a new logo, put the home page in, terms of services. If you noticed, on enterprise apps, these are all bits that were automatically put in. So with the app registration, because it's kind of we're configuring, as a developer, probably we're configuring an app within here from scratch, which is based on like a third-party app. We need to put all these items in. Go to authentication. This is where we can actually look at redirect URIs. So this is all, okay, actually this is for Nerdio. So this is what was automatically done for Nerdio. So you can see all the redirect URIs for Nerdio here. As we go down, any certificates and secrets that you need to add. This shows you that if you've got any, sort of optional claims. This is for token configuration. This shows you the API permissions. So this shows you the permissions this app registration needs. So this one's like an open ID for Microsoft Graph. Delegated to sign-in users. We've got one for profile, one for user.read permission as well, all delegated for different. So this is for view users basic profile, to sign in and read users profile as well. So again, this is one other option here for expose an API. So You can define custom scopes to restrict access to data and functionality protected by the API. Again, only used in certain use cases, not used all the time. This is if the app actually, this registered app has any roles. Again, in this case it doesn't, but sometimes you might have a role. So your app might access something that needs a specific role because it'll need certain permission level. Owners, so I'm the owner of this, but again, always recommend having owners or a group of owners at least. And here's where we've got this app obviously needs cloud application administrator role because it needs to access a specific permission. So let's go back to app registrations and actually go through a new registration. So a couple again prerequisites. You make sure your account has a relevant permission. So either application administrator, application developer, or cloud application administrator is kind of the sort of minimum permissions. Obviously a global admin would do as well. You need to make sure you've set up your tenant, which I already have, and also that you've got obviously an Azure AD account. So we'll just call this IT Geek Demo App. So that's okay. Supporting account types. Who can use this application? Accounts in your organization. So this is, we mentioned single tenant or multi-tenant earlier. So if it's single tenant, only people in our directory. If it's multi-tenant, it'll be any organization directory or any Azure AD directory. So this is if you want to use personal accounts as well. So this is any Azure Active Directory multi-tenanted and personal Microsoft 365 accounts like Skype or sort of anything like that, or personal accounts only. So I'm going to do this as a single tenant account. So a single tenant app, and then here we can put in redirect URIs. So it can either be a public client, native, or web, or single page application. Just go to web here. I'll put in https://com. And then you can register that, and then that'll register it. And then we have access to configure all the, for any more redirect URLs, any sort of client credentials we mentioned, and all the items that we looked at earlier about branding, authentication, etc. So you can go through all those. So that's kind of what I wanted to cover in this episode. We've looked at obviously app registrations. We've looked at we've looked at enterprise applications. Do not forget. Book giveaway, Melanie Quinn, Certified Kubernetes Administrator CKA exam guide. You need to be a subscriber. You need to like and comment on the video, hashtag IamITGeek. You also need to share this on one of your social media platforms, Twitter or LinkedIn, hashtag IamITGeek. So this video. So thank you for watching. I hope you are enjoying it. I'm really overwhelmed with the support and the sort of the feedback I'm getting about this series, so thank you again very much. Do not forget to sort of like, comment and subscribe. I'm really enjoying doing the YouTube at the moment, so hopefully I can keep it growing. Lots more topics to come, as you can see in the portal. We've got loads more to come in this series. I see my socials as well in the description below, and a link to Microsoft Docs, Microsoft Learn Docs around app registrations and enterprise applications as well. So thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye.